July 2025. A date etched in the minds of many, both on the island and abroad. The weight of history hangs heavy in the air. Cuba is tense, the air thick with memory, a palpable sense of anticipation and unease. The vibrant colors of the buildings seem muted, overshadowed by the current climate. 4 years ago, on July 11th, 2021, a day that forever changed the landscape of Cuban society. Thousands of ordinary Cubans, men and women, young and old, took to the streets. Mothers, fathers, concerned for the well-being of their families and the future of their nation. Students, the future generation, demanding a voice in their own destiny. They shattered decades of silence, their voices rising in a chorus of discontent and hope. They marched for food, a basic necessity denied to many, medicine desperately needed to alleviate suffering and save lives, and the right to speak freely, to express their opinions without fear of reprisal. Today, the streets are quiet, a stark contrast to the vibrant energy of that historic day, but heavily policed, a constant reminder of the government's watchful eye. The government is determined, resolute in its efforts, to prevent another uprising, to maintain control at all costs. Yet, beneath the surface, frustration simmers, a quiet rebellion brewing in the hearts of many. The hope and unity of that day, the shared dream of a better future, still linger in people's minds, a beacon of possibility in the face of adversity. This anniversary is different, a turning point perhaps. The US has just announced, making a bold statement on the international stage. Direct sanctions against Miguel Díaz-Canel, a move that sends shockwaves through the Cuban government. Cuba's leader, the man at the helm of the nation. It's a personal move, a departure from traditional diplomatic strategies, meant to hold him accountable, to answer for his actions, for the crackdown on his own people, the suppression of dissent, and the violation of human rights. The news spreads quickly, like wildfire through dry grass. Whispered in homes and online, shared in hushed tones and encrypted messages, adding new tension to an already strained and fragile situation. To an already emotional time, a period of reflection and remembrance. For many, the question is, a question that hangs heavy in the air. Will this action bring real change, a tangible improvement in their daily lives, or is it just another gesture, a symbolic act with little practical impact? The memory of July 11th, a day of courage and defiance, is now tied to international politics, a pawn in a larger geopolitical game. And the fate of Cuba's leadership, a future shrouded in uncertainty. The story of that day is still being written, its ending yet unknown. To truly understand the weight of the sanctions and their impact, we must revisit the pivotal moment of July 11th, 2021. It was a day that etched itself into the collective memory of Cuba. Years upon years of economic crisis and widespread hunger, a situation exacerbated by existing restrictions, had created a tinderbox of discontent. Compounding the issue, frequent and prolonged blackouts pushed the Cuban people to the absolute edge of their endurance. The lack of basic necessities became unbearable. In this climate of desperation, the anthem Patria y Vida, Homeland and Life, emerged as a powerful symbol. It perfectly captured their collective longing for fundamental change and a better future. The song resonated deeply, becoming a rallying cry. The dam finally broke, and the protests began in the small town of San Antonio de los Baños. The movement spread rapidly like wildfire, fueled by the power of social media and the pent-up frustrations of the populace. This was not a carefully orchestrated political movement, driven by specific leaders or factions. Instead, it was a spontaneous and powerful eruption of citizen power, a collective expression of years of suppressed grievances. For the first time in decades, the government appeared to have lost control of the streets as massive crowds gathered. Cubans chanted "Libertad," freedom, and "Abajo la dictadura," down with the dictatorship, demanding basic human dignity and fundamental freedoms that had long been denied. The world watched in real time as ordinary people broadcast their reality, capturing the raw emotion and intensity of the moment. They were bypassing the constraints of state-controlled media and sharing their stories directly with the global community. For many, fear gave way to a sense of desperation, a feeling that they had nothing left to lose, and that desperation in turn transformed into an extraordinary display of courage. It was more than just a protest, it was a primal cry from the very soul of a nation yearning for change. The regime, accustomed to absolute control, was shaken as never before by this unprecedented display of public defiance. The government's response was swift and brutal. Díaz-Canel called for combat, unleashing police and loyalists on peaceful protesters. Streets filled with violence, arrests, beatings, and heartbreak. Hundreds, many young, were detained and sentenced in rushed trials. The message was clear: dissent would be crushed. The regime shut down the internet, trying to hide the crackdown and control the narrative. They blamed the US, called protesters mercenaries, but the truth was out. The world saw both the courage of Cubans and the regime's cruelty. The repression didn't end with the protests. It became a daily reality. Fear returned, but so did a new sense of defiance. The cost of speaking out was now painfully clear. In response, the US imposed targeted sanctions on Díaz-Canel and top officials. These measures freeze assets and block travel to the US, aiming to isolate the regime's leaders. The sanctions are symbolic but also practical, making it harder for those responsible for repression to operate internationally. The message: there are consequences for human rights abuses. This isn't about punishing ordinary Cubans, but about pressuring those at the top. The US hopes to create cracks within the ruling elite. Whether this will work remains to be seen. For now, Díaz-Canel is officially labeled a violator of human rights. Will these sanctions matter? The Cuban government denounces them as imperial aggression, using them to rally hardliners and blame the US for Cuba's woes. Some analysts say targeted sanctions can create pressure within the regime, but change is slow. The Cuban system is built for survival, with powerful security forces and foreign allies. Sanctions may inconvenience leaders, but alone, they're unlikely to topple the government. Real change must come from within Cuba. The sanctions spotlight repression and name those responsible. But can they feed the hungry or free prisoners? The move is significant, but the outcome is uncertain. The struggle for Cuba's future continues. The decades-long sanctions against Cuba have deeply split opinions, both on the island and within the diaspora. It's a complex issue with no easy answers, and the impact is felt in every corner of Cuban society. In Miami, home to a large Cuban exile community, celebrations erupt. It's seen as a small victory, a sign that the world is finally watching and acknowledging the plight of the Cuban people. The international community is paying attention to the evolving situation. Online, hashtags like #SosCuba and #PatriaVida quickly trend, amplifying the voices of those seeking change. Activists claim a win, feeling empowered by the increased attention and pressure on the Cuban government. Inside Cuba, however, reactions are far quieter and more complex, a mixture of hope and trepidation. Some see justice being served, a potential path towards a better future, but others fear more hardship, anticipating further economic strain and uncertainty. The government's narrative predictably blames the US for all the island's woes, deflecting responsibility. Meanwhile, private conversations reveal a nuanced perspective, a blend of hope for change and deep skepticism about the future. Many worry that the sanctions will simply be used as another excuse for the government's failures, leading to further suffering for ordinary citizens. The powerful always find a way to protect themselves, says one Cuban, expressing a common sentiment. And it's always us, the people, who ultimately pay the price for their decisions. The island remains deeply divided, a nation grappling with its past and uncertain about its future. It's a nation caught between hope and fear, optimism and despair. Between those who genuinely believe in the possibility of meaningful change and those who harbor deep doubts that such change will ever truly come to fruition. The sanctions have undoubtedly made a significant impact on the lives of ordinary Cubans, but there's no consensus on what that impact truly means for the future of the island. The real consequences of these actions are still unfolding, leaving the Cuban people in a state of anxious anticipation. After the protests and sanctions, Cuba is silent not with peace, but with fear. Repression lingers, and hope has gone underground. The world sees a divided island, exiles, dream of change the government claims unity, and most Cubans live between fear and longing. Can sanctions bring real change, or are they just another chapter in a long struggle? The answer lies not in Washington, but in the courage of ordinary Cubans. The path to freedom is long and uncertain, but the spirit of July 11th endures. The world's role is to support and amplify Cuban voices. The flame of hope must be kept alive until Patria y Vida is more than just a song.